The engagement party. Vince Romano, adjusted his black tie for the third time, staring at his reflection in the ornate mirror of his mansion's master bedroom. Tonight was supposed to be perfect. His engagement to Isabella Moretti would unite two of the most powerful crime families on the East Coast. The alliance had been months in the making, carefully orchestrated by both families to strengthen their hold on the city's underground operations. The Romano estate buzzed with activity as caterers rushed back and forth, setting up tables draped in white silk and gold accents. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the marble floors, and the scent of expensive roses filled the air. Security was tight but discreet. Men in dark suits positioned at every entrance, their trained eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. Vince had built his reputation on control. At 35, he commanded respect from everyone in his organization through a combination of strategic thinking and calculated ruthlessness. Nothing happened in his territory without his knowledge, and he liked it that way. Tonight's party represented more than just an engagement. It was a public declaration of power, a message to rival families that the Romanos were stronger than ever. Isabella appeared in the doorway, stunning in a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves perfectly. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, diamond earrings catching the light as she moved. She was beautiful, intelligent, and came from the right family. On paper, she was everything Vince needed in a wife. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness despite her composed exterior. Vince nodded, taking her hand and pressing it to his lips. "We've prepared for months. Everything will go according to plan." But even as he said the words, something nagged at the back of his mind. 3 years had passed since the divorce. 3 years since he'd made the hardest decision of his life. He'd convinced himself it was necessary, that love was a luxury he couldn't afford in his line of work. Elena had been too pure for his world, too innocent for the darkness that surrounded him daily. The grand ballroom filled quickly as guests began arriving, politicians who turned blind eyes to certain activities, judges who could be counted on for favorable rulings, business owners who laundered money through their establishments, all mingled with family members and trusted associates. The string quartet played softly in the corner, while waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Vince moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. His father, retired but still influential, beamed with pride as he introduced Vince and Isabella to important guests. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. "To my son, Vincent, and his beautiful bride-to-be Isabella," his father announced, raising his glass high. "May this union bring prosperity and strength to both our families." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Vince felt Isabella's hand squeeze his arm as they smiled and nodded to their guests. This was his life now. Carefully orchestrated public appearances, strategic alliances, and calculated emotions. It was safer this way, more predictable. As the evening progressed, Vince found himself relaxing slightly. The initial tension had faded, replaced by the familiar comfort of being in complete control of his environment. He discussed business with associates, charmed the wives of important allies, and played the role of devoted fiancé to perfection. The band had just finished their second set when Vince noticed a commotion near the main entrance. His security chief, Marcus, was speaking rapidly into his earpiece, his face creased with concern. Vince excused himself from a conversation about waterfront development and made his way over. "What's the situation?" he asked quietly, his voice betraying none of the sudden tension he felt. "Sir, there's someone at the gate. She says she's family, but she's not on the guest list. The guards are confused because—" Marcus hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Because what?" Vince's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Because she looks exactly like your ex-wife, sir. But that's impossible, right? I mean, she moved to Europe after the divorce. She wouldn't just show up here. Vince felt his blood turn to ice. Elena. Here. Tonight. It couldn't be possible. She'd taken the generous settlement and disappeared from his life completely. No contact, no forwarding address, nothing. He'd made sure of it. "Let me see the security feed," he ordered, his hands already reaching for Marcus's tablet. The black and white image on the screen made his heart stop. Even through the grainy footage, there was no mistaking that face. Elena stood at the main gate, speaking to the guards. She looked different, older, more mature somehow. But it was definitely her. Her long auburn hair caught the light from the security lamps, and she was wearing a simple black dress that seemed to emphasize something about her silhouette. "Sir?" Marcus asked quietly. "What are your orders?" Vince couldn't speak. His mind raced through possibilities, scenarios, reasons why she might be here. Had something happened to her in Europe? Was she in danger? Did she need help? Or worse, was this some kind of setup, a move by a rival family who had discovered his weakness? "Vincent?" Isabella appeared at his elbow, her face curious. "Is everything all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." The irony of her words wasn't lost on him. In many ways, Elena was exactly that, a ghost from a past he'd tried desperately to bury. A reminder of the man he'd been before he fully embraced the darkness of his family's legacy. "Just a security matter," he managed to say, his voice sounding strange even to his own ears. "Nothing to worry about." But Isabella wasn't easily dismissed. Her sharp eyes caught sight of the tablet screen, and Vince watched her expression change as she took in the image of the woman at the gate. "Who is she?" Isabella's voice carried a new edge, the tone of a woman who sensed competition. Before Vince could answer, Marcus's earpiece crackled to life. "Sir, she's asking specifically for you. She says it's urgent, that she has something important to tell you." "Something about—" The guard's voice hesitated. "Something about your child, sir." The tablet slipped from Vince's suddenly numb fingers, clattering to the marble floor. Around him, the party continued in full swing, guests laughing and dancing, completely unaware that his carefully constructed world was about to implode. Isabella's sharp intake of breath told him she'd heard every word. Her face had gone pale, and her perfectly manicured nails dug into his arm. "Your child?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the music. "Vincent, what is she talking about? Who is this woman?" Vince's mind was spinning. A child? It was impossible. He'd been careful, always careful. And even if something had happened, Elena would have told him. She wouldn't have hidden something like that from him. Would she? But even as he thought it, he knew it wasn't true. The way they'd parted, the things he'd said to make her leave, the cruel words he'd used to push her away for her own safety. She'd have every reason to hate him, every reason to keep his child away from him. The security feed showed Elena shifting her weight, and for the first time, Vince noticed what Marcus had been trying to tell him. Her dress, the way she stood, the slight curve of her silhouette. She was pregnant. Very pregnant. "Get her," he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the noise of the party like a blade. "Bring her in through the service entrance, quietly." "Sir, are you sure that's wise?" Marcus looked uncertain. "With all these guests here, and Miss Moretti—" "Now," Vince commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. As Marcus hurried away to carry out his orders, Vince turned to face Isabella. Her dark eyes blazed with a mixture of hurt and fury that he recognized all too well. She was her father's daughter, after all, and the Moretti family didn't take betrayal lightly. "We need to talk," she said through gritted teeth. "Now!" But Vince was already moving, his mind focused on only one thing. Elena was here, carrying what appeared to be his child, and nothing else mattered. Not the party, not the alliance, not even his own safety. After 3 years of trying to forget her, she was about to walk back into his life and change everything forever. The confrontation. Vince paced the length of his private study like a caged animal, his mind racing as he waited for Elena to arrive. The room, lined with leather-bound books and expensive artwork, had always been his sanctuary. Tonight, it felt like a prison. Through the heavy oak door, he could hear the muffled sounds of the engagement party continuing without him, laughter, music, and conversations that now seemed to belong to another world entirely. Isabella had stormed off after their brief, heated exchange in the hallway. Her parting words still echoed in his ears. "Fix this, Vincent, or the engagement is off. My father won't tolerate this kind of embarrassment." He'd watched her disappear into the crowd, her spine rigid with fury, already calculating how to explain his sudden absence to their guests. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 10 o'clock when Marcus finally appeared in the doorway. "She's here, sir. I've stationed men outside, but—" He paused, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, she's definitely pregnant. Very pregnant. I'd guess 7, maybe 8 months." Vince's hands clenched into fists at his sides. If Elena was 8 months pregnant, the timing meant the child had been conceived right around the time of their divorce. The memory of their final night together came rushing back, the desperate passion, the tears, the promises that had all turned to ash by morning. "Send her in," he said quietly. "And Marcus? No interruptions. I don't care if the building is on fire." Marcus nodded and stepped aside. For a moment there was nothing but silence. Then Elena appeared in the doorway, and Vince felt his world tilt on its axis. She was more beautiful than he remembered, pregnancy lending her a radiance that took his breath away. Her auburn hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and her green eyes held the same intelligence and warmth that had first captured his heart 5 years ago. But there was something different now, a strength, a resolve that hadn't been there before. She moved slowly into the room, one hand resting protectively on her rounded belly. She wore a simple black dress that accentuated her condition, and Vince found himself staring at the visible proof of what they'd created together. "Hello, Vincent," she said softly, her voice carrying that slight accent that had always made his name sound like music. "Elena." He couldn't manage anything else. 3 years of practiced control of buried emotions crumbled in an instant. They stood there for a long moment, the weight of unspoken words filling the space between them. Vince wanted to reach for her, to touch her face and confirm she was real. But the careful distance she maintained told him everything he needed to know about how she felt. "You look well," she said finally, her eyes taking in his expensive suit and perfectly styled appearance. "Success suits you." "Don't," he said sharply. "Don't do that. Don't pretend this is some casual reunion." His voice softened despite himself. "You left. You disappeared completely. And now you show up here tonight, looking like—" He gestured helplessly toward her belly. "Looking like I'm carrying your child?" Elena's voice remained calm, but he caught the flash of steel in her eyes. "Because I am, Vincent. Despite everything you said, everything you did to push me away, this baby is yours." The confirmation hit him like a physical blow. He'd known, of course, from the moment he saw the security footage, but hearing her say it made it real in a way that terrified him. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question came out rougher than he'd intended. "Why did you just disappear?" Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Tell you? After what you said to me the night you handed me those divorce papers? After you told me I was a liability? That I was too weak for your world?" Her voice grew stronger with each word. "You made it very clear that you wanted me gone, that I was better off without you. So I left. Vince closed his eyes, remembering that terrible night. He'd forced himself to be cruel, to say things he didn't mean, because it was the only way to make her go. A rival family had been making threats, getting too close to discovering his weakness. Elena's safety had depended on her believing he didn't love her anymore. "You don't understand," he said desperately. "I had to make you leave. There were threats, people who would have used you to get to me. I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" Elena's voice rose slightly. "By breaking my heart? By making me believe I meant nothing to you?" She shook her head. "I was strong enough to handle your world, Vincent. I proved that every day we were together. But you never trusted me enough to let me make that choice." The accusation stung because it was true. He'd made the decision for both of them, convinced he knew what was best. Looking at her now, seeing the woman she'd become, he realized what a colossal mistake he'd made. "Where have you been?" he asked quietly. "I tried to find you after things calmed down, but you'd vanished completely." "London first, then Paris. I used the money from the divorce settlement to start over." She moved carefully to one of the leather chairs and sat down, her hand never leaving her belly. "I built a new life, Vincent. I have a job I love, friends who care about me, a future that doesn't depend on looking over my shoulder every day." "Then why are you here?" The question escaped before he could stop it. "If you have such a perfect life, why come back now?" For the first time since entering the room, Elena's composure cracked slightly. He saw her swallow hard, saw the uncertainty flicker across her features. "Because despite everything, you deserve to know about your child," she said quietly. "And because I need something from you." Vince felt his chest tighten. "What kind of something?" "Medical records," Elena said, not meeting his eyes. "The baby, there might be complications. The doctors need a complete family history, both sides. I know your family has a history of heart problems, but I need specifics." The practical nature of her request hit him like a slap. She hadn't come back for him, hadn't come back because she'd missed him or wanted to reconcile. She'd come because their child might be in danger, and she needed information only he could provide. "What kind of complications?" His voice was hoarse. "There's an irregularity in the heartbeat. It might be nothing, but if it's genetic—" She trailed off, finally looking up at him. "I couldn't take the risk of not telling you, not when it comes to our baby's health." Vince sank into the chair across from her, the weight of the revelation crushing down on him. His child, their child, was in danger. And he'd been completely unaware. While he'd been planning engagement parties and political alliances, Elena had been facing this alone. "How long have you known?" he asked. "About the complications?" "2 weeks. That's when I decided to come back." She paused, then added softly, "I've been arguing with myself about it for months, actually. Whether to contact you, whether you had a right to know. In the end, I couldn't live with myself if something happened and I hadn't tried everything to help our baby." The sound of raised voices from the main part of the house broke through their bubble of isolation. Isabella's voice carried clearly through the thick walls, and Vince winced as he caught fragments of angry Italian mixed with English. "Your fiancé seems upset," Elena observed, her tone carefully neutral. "She's not," Vince started, then stopped. What could he say? That the engagement was a business arrangement? That he'd never felt for Isabella a fraction of what he'd felt for Elena? That he'd spent 3 years trying to convince himself he could learn to love someone else? "She's not what?" Elena pressed. "She's not you," he said simply, the words escaping before his carefully constructed walls could stop them. Elena's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, Vince saw a flash of the woman who had once looked at him like he hung the moon, but it disappeared quickly, replaced by the careful guard she'd erected around her heart. "Don't," she whispered. Don't say things like that. It's not fair. Fair? Vince leaned forward, his control finally snapping. You want to talk about fair? It's not fair that I had to choose between your safety and my happiness. It's not fair that I've spent 3 years in hell trying to forget the only woman I've ever loved. It's not fair that you're sitting in my study, carrying my child, and I can't even touch you because I destroyed everything good between us. Tears sparkled in Elena's eyes, but she blinked them back determinedly. You made your choice, Vincent. You chose your world over me. I chose your life over my happiness, he corrected fiercely. The Torino family was circling like vultures. They'd already killed 2 wives of my associates. I couldn't risk you ending up like that. Elena stared at him for a long moment, processing this information. The Torinos? But they were eliminated 6 months after our divorce. Exactly. 6 months too late to save our marriage, but soon enough to keep you alive. Vince ran his hands through his hair, destroying his perfectly styled appearance. By the time it was safe for you to come back, you were already gone. My investigators couldn't find a trace. Because I didn't want to be found, Elena said quietly. I was too hurt, too angry. I thought you'd just gotten tired of me, that you'd found someone more suitable for your position. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. They'd both made choices based on incomplete information. Both sacrificed their happiness for what they thought was right. And now, 3 years later, they were sitting in the wreckage of those decisions, with an innocent child caught in the middle. Outside the study door, the voices grew louder. Vince could hear his father's booming voice trying to smooth things over with what were clearly upset guests. Isabella's family was probably demanding explanations he couldn't give. I should go, Elena said, starting to rise from her chair with some difficulty. I've already caused enough trouble. I'll send you the medical information the doctors need and— No. Vince was on his feet instantly, his hand reaching out toward her before he caught himself. You're not walking out of my life again. Not when you're carrying my child. Not when there might be complications. Vincent, you have a life here, an engagement, a business, responsibilities. I can't just— You can and you will, he said firmly. I failed you once, Elena. I'm not going to fail our child. He moved to his desk and pulled out his phone. I'm calling the best specialist in the city. We're going to get you the care you need, and we're going to figure this out. We? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. We, he confirmed, his eyes meeting hers with a determination she remembered from their early days together. I don't know how yet, but we're going to fix this. All of it. The sound of approaching footsteps in the hallway told them their private moment was about to end. Soon, they'd have to face the chaos outside, Isabella's fury, his family's questions, the political implications of his broken engagement. But for now, in this moment, they were just Vincent and Elena again, connected by the child she carried and the love they'd never quite managed to kill. The door burst open just as Elena managed to get to her feet, and Isabella stormed in with Vince's father close behind. Her face was flushed with anger and champagne, her carefully styled hair slightly disheveled. So this is her, Isabella said, her eyes raking over Elena with undisguised hostility. This is the woman who's going to destroy everything we've built together. Elena straightened her spine, meeting Isabella's glare with quiet dignity. I'm not here to destroy anything. I'm here for my child. Your child? Isabella laughed harshly. Convenient timing, don't you think? Right when Vincent is about to marry me? Enough, Vince said sharply, stepping between the two women. But the damage was already done. The battle lines were drawn, and he could see in Elena's eyes that she was already pulling away again, already regretting her decision to come back. The war for Vincent's future was about to begin. The choice. The tension in the study was thick enough to cut with a knife. Vince's father, Anthony Romano, stood in the doorway with the calculating expression that had made him a legend in the family business. His weathered face showed no emotion as his eyes moved from Elena to Isabella, then finally settled on his son. "Vincent," the older man said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of decades of authority. "Perhaps you'd like to explain to me why your engagement party has turned into a circus." Isabella moved closer to Vince's father, her political instincts kicking in. "Mr. Romano, I'm sure we can resolve this situation quickly. This woman clearly has some delusions about Vincent's past, but—" "I'm not delusional," Elena said firmly, her voice cutting through Isabella's words. "And I'm not going anywhere until I have what I came for." Anthony's eyebrows rose slightly. In his world, people didn't interrupt the Moretti princess, and they certainly didn't stand their ground against the Romano family patriarch. But something in Elena's bearing seemed to intrigue rather than offend him. "And what exactly did you come for, my dear?" he asked, his tone deceptively gentle. "Medical information about your family's cardiac history," Elena replied without hesitation. "For our child." She placed both hands on her belly, making her condition unmistakable. The silence that followed was deafening. Anthony's face remained impassive, but Vince saw the slight tightening around his father's eyes that meant he was processing this information at lightning speed. The old man had built his empire on reading people and situations, and Vince knew he was already calculating the implications of this revelation. "Our child?" Anthony repeated slowly, his gaze shifting to Vincent. "Is there something you forgot to mention, son?" Before Vince could answer, Isabella exploded. "This is ridiculous. She could be carrying anyone's baby. She's obviously here for money, trying to break up our engagement for some kind of payout." Elena's face flushed with anger, and Vince saw the fire that had first attracted him to her all those years ago. "I don't want your money. I don't want anything from your family except medical information that could save my child's life. If that threatens you so much, maybe you should ask yourself why." "How dare you?" Isabella started forward, but Anthony held up a hand that stopped her mid-sentence. "Enough," the older man said quietly. "Isabella, return to the party. Tell everyone that Vincent is handling a family emergency. Make our apologies to your parents." "But Mr. Romano, now." The single word carried enough menace to make Isabella take a step back. She shot a venomous look at Elena before turning on her heel and stalking out of the study. Once the door closed behind her, Anthony moved to the wine cabinet and poured himself a generous glass of scotch. "Sit," he commanded Elena, gesturing to the chair she'd vacated. "You look like you're about to fall over." Elena hesitated for a moment, then slowly lowered herself back into the chair. The confrontation had clearly exhausted her, and Vince felt a surge of protective anger at Isabella's attack. "Now," Anthony said, settling into his own chair with the fluid grace of a man who had learned to mask his age. "Let's discuss this like civilized people. Elena, isn't it? You were married to my son." "For 2 years," Elena confirmed, "until he decided I was too much of a liability." Anthony's sharp eyes flicked to Vince, who stood frozen by the window. "The Torino situation," the older man said. It wasn't a question. "You knew?" Vince asked, surprised. "I know everything that affects my family," Anthony replied, "including the threats against your wife and your rather dramatic solution to the problem." He turned back to Elena. "My son can be an idiot sometimes, but his heart was in the right place. He was protecting you the only way he knew how." Elena's face showed confusion and hurt. "By making me believe he didn't love me anymore? By throwing me out of his life like I was nothing?" "By keeping you alive," Anthony said bluntly. "The Torinos had already killed Maria Santos and Jennifer Liu. You would have been next." He took a sip of his scotch. "Vincent made a choice between your life and his happiness. Not many men would make that sacrifice." Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks, despite her efforts to maintain control. But he never told me. He never gave me the chance to understand. Because you would have insisted on staying, Vince said quietly, finally finding his voice. You would have said you could handle it, that we could face it together, and I would have been too weak to keep refusing you. So you lied to me instead. You broke my heart instead. Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Do you have any idea what these past 3 years have been like, thinking that everything we had was fake? Every day, Vince said, moving closer to her chair. I've regretted it every single day, but I'd rather have you alive and hating me than dead and loving me. Anthony watched this exchange with the sharp attention of a man who had built his life on understanding human nature. The question now, he said, is what we do moving forward. There's nothing to do, Elena said tiredly. I came for medical information, nothing more. Once I have that, I'll go back to London. My life is there now. Your life is here, Vince said fiercely. Our child's life is here. Do you really think I'm going to let you disappear again, especially when there might be medical complications? You don't get to let me do anything, Elena flared. I've managed perfectly well without you for 3 years. I can manage for the rest of my life. Can you? Anthony interjected quietly. Can you really manage raising a Romano child alone, especially one who might have health issues? Do you have any idea what kind of target that makes both of you? Elena paled. What do you mean? I mean that news of this child's existence will eventually leak out, Anthony explained patiently. When it does, every enemy our family has ever made will see an opportunity. They'll see a way to get to Vincent through his child. He leaned forward. You can't protect a baby from that kind of threat by yourself. I kept myself safe for 3 years, Elena protested. Because everyone thought you were dead to us, Vince said. Because they believed I'd truly cast you aside. But now they'll know the truth. That you're the mother of my child. Which makes you the most valuable leverage anyone could have against me. Elena looked between father and son, seeing the truth in their faces. She'd walked back into their world thinking she could take what she needed and leave. But the reality was far more complicated. So what are you saying? She asked quietly. That I'm trapped here? I'm saying your family, Anthony replied. And family protects family. We'll make sure you have the best medical care possible. We'll keep you safe. Both of you. And in return, Anthony and Vince exchanged a look. In return, the older man said carefully, you let us be part of our grandchild's life. You let Vincent be a father. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her hands moving in gentle circles over her belly. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. What about Isabella? What about the engagement? What about them? Vince asked, moving to kneel beside her chair. Elena, look at me. Reluctantly, she met his eyes. In them, she saw the man she'd fallen in love with all those years ago, vulnerable, desperate, completely devoted to her. I never stopped loving you, he said simply. Not for a single day. The engagement to Isabella was business, nothing more. A way to try to fill the hole you left behind. But it was never real. Not the way we were real. Vincent. Elena's voice broke. I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust in the worst possible way. But if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I want to be the husband you deserved the first time, and I want to be the father our child needs. Elena looked around the study, taking in the elegant furniture. The expensive artwork, the subtle signs of wealth and power that had once intimidated her. But now she saw something different. She saw a sanctuary, a place where the man she loved had waited for her return, even when he'd convinced himself it would never come. The medical records, she said suddenly. Already being compiled, Anthony assured her. Dr. Martinelli will have everything he needs by morning, and I've arranged for you to see the best pediatric cardiologist in the state tomorrow afternoon. And my job in London? My apartment? We'll handle everything, Vince said. If you want to keep working, we'll set up something here. If you want to stay home with the baby, that's fine too. Whatever makes you happy. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision before her. She could go back to London, raise her child alone, and always wonder what might have been. Or she could trust the man who had broken her heart once, but had done it out of love, not malice. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? Vince asked gently. Of believing in us again. Of letting myself hope. She opened her eyes and looked at him. What if we can't make it work? What if the reasons we failed before are still there? Then we'll deal with them together this time, Vince said firmly. No more secrets, no more unilateral decisions. We'll face whatever comes as partners. Anthony stood up, recognizing that his presence was no longer needed. I'll go handle the mess with the Morettis, he said. This won't be easy, but we've weathered worse storms. He paused at the door. Elena, welcome home. After the older man left, Vincent and Elena sat in silence for several minutes. The sounds of the engagement party had faded as guests began to leave, probably after receiving some carefully crafted explanation for the evening's disruption. I need time, Elena said finally. I can't just jump back into this like nothing happened. I understand, Vince said, though she could see how much the words cost him. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. And Isabella? We'll be informed tomorrow that the engagement is off. It was a mistake from the beginning. Vince reached out tentatively, and when Elena didn't pull away, he covered her hand with his. I've already wasted 3 years of our lives. I won't waste another day pretending to love someone else. Elena felt the familiar warmth of his touch, the electric connection that had never truly died despite everything that had happened between them. The baby's due in 6 weeks, she said quietly. Then we have 6 weeks to figure this out, Vince replied. 6 weeks to rebuild what we lost and create something even stronger. And if we can't? Vince brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. Then at least our child will know that both parents tried. But Elena? He waited until she met his eyes. We can. I know we can. We just have to be brave enough to try. Outside the window, dawn was beginning to break over the city. The engagement party was over, but for Vincent and Elena, something new was just beginning. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges from within the family, threats from outside, and the constant work of rebuilding broken trust. But as Elena felt their baby move within her and saw the hope shining in Vincent's eyes, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, love really could conquer all. The Romano family had always been known for their strength, their loyalty, and their ability to survive against impossible odds. Now, as Vincent helped Elena to her feet and led her toward the door that would take them into their uncertain but hopeful future, they were about to prove that their greatest strength of all was their capacity to forgive and begin again.